everybody to Week 5 Fantasy Football in Review for the Mills and Friends League. I'm your commissioner. So, let's get started. It was another exciting week in fantasy football. We had a couple of the matchups. Came down to Monday night again, as per the usual. There was also a couple of trades that were made day after I did my review last week. So let's take a look at what trades were made. So we had one between my team and the Walker Off win and Wolf's Warriors team. And this one started out, Wolf's Warriors offered me the trade of Marvin Harrison for Brian Robinson, just straight up. And when I was looking at our rosters, he has a ton of wide receivers, but maybe they're not as. Or he has a bunch of running backs, but they were maybe not like the highest caliber of running backs, at least so far in the year. And then if you look at me, I've been picking up a bunch of receivers because I've had a bunch of receivers get injured this year, and they're maybe not the highest quality. But I don't have a ton of running backs, so giving up a running back for me was a lot. I don't really have any depth there, and then at the same time, Wolf's Warriors team has no depth at receiver, but yet he's giving away one of his best receivers. So that's how the additions of Roscoe Johnson and Calvin Ridley came into play. So we'll have to see how this trade ended up working out for both of us. I think it was a fairly fair trade, but we'll end up seeing. Brian Robinson has pretty consistently, every game he's had over 10 points, fantasy points, which is pretty good. Marvin Harrison now has had 2 weeks where he's been under 10 points, which is not too good. But he's had games where he's done really well as well. And I was looking for a wide receiver because mine just seemed to get hurt all of the time. So that was how that trade happened. Now I don't know like the inner workings of who offered who necessarily. I believe it was Chance offering. The You're Finally Awake team offering the Lamb Chubb's Play Along team. And I believe that this was the initial offer, that they didn't go back and forth on that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's how this one worked out. And it was Aaron Jones and Deebo Samuel for Terry McLaurin and Jonathan Taylor. So then Lamb Chubb's Play Along gets Aaron Jones and Deebo Samuel, and You're Finally Awake gets. Or no, this is not right. You're Finally Awake. Yes, You're Finally Awake is getting Aaron Jones, Deebo Samuel, and then Lamb Chub's Play Along is getting Terry McLaurin and Jonathan Taylor. And now Jonathan Taylor was injured this week, but it's hopefully not an injury that will keep him out for the whole year. So Lamb Chub's Play Along also has Nick Chubb, and he's kind of hoping for second half burst that he's going to be able to win a lot when they come back. But he's 1-4 right now. Things didn't work out this week for him, and we will get into those matchups. But those are the 2 trades that happened there last week, and they had those players for this week's games. So let's get into the first matchup, which was the biggest blowout of the week. I had absolutely no chance in this one because pretty much every player for No Raw No Problem, which was a team name change, he has now. He had Amon-Ra St. Brown, which was his first round draft pick, was on a bye this week. So I was hoping that, might have somewhat of a chance. But no. His team was highest scoring team for the week. This is the highest scoring team in our league so far in all 5 weeks. And it was by a lot, too. So just pretty much every player on the No Raw No Problem team is just loving where they're at in fantasy. Off of the bench, they didn't have a whole lot going on. There was some buys, maybe. Um, yeah, I think it was just Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he just started the right guys. Chase Brown had a really nice game. It seems like he's starting to emerge, maybe get ahead of Zach Moss a little bit there in Cincinnati, or the running back. So a lot of things going right for this team right now. And for my team, it wasn't a bad week. Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, definitely struggling. But yeah, running back Kenneth Walker didn't have a 30-point game like he did. Derrick Henry didn't have a 30-point game for no problem either, like he did last week. Still, 11's not terrible. Definitely don't like that he only had 5 carries. That's a little bit concerning. But they were behind for pretty much the whole game, so they just got into, we have to pass all the time. And Kenneth Walker still got 8 targets, so I like seeing that for my team. That I think that Kenneth Walker will continue to be pretty good for me. And then Marvin Harrison, who I traded for, did not have a very good game. He was targeted 7 times, which is a decent amount, but he only caught 2 of those passes. He was facing one of the tougher defenses in the league, so definitely I'm just going to have to live with these performances sometimes, but having a guy who can go off for like 20-point performance is still pretty nice. So I'm definitely hoping to see more production out of the guy that I just traded for in future weeks. And then, unfortunately, yes, I had my first round pick in A.J. Brown. He's been out since week 1 with a hamstring injury, and they were on bye, and I'm hoping that he's going to be back this next week finally. And then, of course, my 3rd round draft pick, Nico Collins, who has been playing like a first round draft pick, really. He's been one of the better wide receivers in terms of fantasy production. He went down pretty early in this, too. He had 2 big catches early and a touchdown, and then his hamstring decided to give out on him. And then I finally got huge production out of the tight end position. I picked the right tight end finally for starting. So I actually got lucky with that, but unfortunately I had no chance of winning, so that didn't really work out in the end. But hopefully I could get that kind of tight end production in future weeks as well. But then I also was using Austin Eckler now that I didn't have Brian Robinson anymore. And he did all right yardage-wise, but he did fumble the ball, which is always a concern. And he didn't get touchdowns, which is kind of what Austin Eckler is known for. And Washington's been utilizing, like, since Eckler was out last week, they started utilizing a 3rd running back who has now he got 2 touchdowns on the ground last week and 1 this week as well, which was that McNichols, I think is his last name. I forget what his first name is, but yeah, so that makes it kind of tough there in Washington that now there's 3 running backs who are getting touches. But still 9 points. I can live with it. We'll see how that ends up working out going forward. And then Josh Downs, now that he's starting to get healthy, he's finally in. Really like the amount of targets he is getting, is 12 and 9 receptions. It's been good with Joe Flacco in there. Joe Flacco's been really good for Josh Downs. But we'll see once Anthony Richardson, if he's coming back next week, how the production looks for this receiver. So that's kind of how my team's looking. I was also very happy with how Jalen Tolbert off of my bench is looking, especially with Brandon Cooks going on IR. I think this was a big pickup, waiver pickup earlier. Oh, we got a new follower just now. Bay __ LB0 just now. Thank you for the follow, and I hope you enjoy watching. If there's any questions you have or anything you'd like to see or hear, that I could do better, please let me know. Always willing to listen to that. And now let's take a look at the next matchup. Let's get out of this blowout matchup that involved my team getting destroyed, and we'll go into this one here. So we've got You're Finally Awake, now at 5-0, continuing his streak of somehow putting like a jinx or a curse somehow on these teams he's playing where they always score less than 100 points against him. This is actually his highest scoring week so far in fantasy, which definitely very happy to see that, I'm sure, out of him. Geno Smith having a great day. And Return of the King playing Deshaun Watson. I don't know what he was thinking. But yeah, that did not work out. Deshaun Watson's not been very good. As a Browns fan, I don't like saying that. It's unfortunate. But yeah, I'm guessing his normal quarterback was on a bye, so he was just trying to pick up a quarterback that he thought might have a decent game because Washington's defense hadn't been very good up to that point. But yeah, Cleveland's offense is so bad it doesn't matter how bad the opponent's defense is. It's just they're not gonna do good. And Bijan Robinson continues to just be below average. And then Aaron Jones getting hurt, so that trade, that's a tough one there. That trade where he just got Aaron Jones. He did give up an injured Jonathan Taylor, so injured running back for an injured running back is how that one worked out. Which is kind of interesting how those things happen. The week that you trade them, and then at the same time, Deebo Samuel, who was a part of that trade too, only 2.5 points. So at least for this week, that trade was looking a little bit rough. I think Deebo Samuel will probably do better going forward, but we will have to see. And then T. Higgins for Cincinnati. All their T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, their main guys. Definitely, they had a really good passing attack. Had really good fantasy day, scoring 38 points, but Baltimore was just a little bit better. And over here, you had Jordan Mason, the running back who's filled in for McCaffrey. This was probably his worst day. He had a fumble, and he lost that fumble, so that lost him some points there. No touchdowns. Still decent production there with like 90 yards of rushing, but then only one target in the passing game, which those are always helpful too for scores, and didn't get a whole lot there. So definitely a struggle there. But I'm sure that what Return of the King team does like to see is Rico Dowdle for Dallas. So their main running back is having a nice game. Of course, there was a fumble there, which you don't like seeing. It was actually kind of a rough day for fantasy running backs, really, in terms of this whole week. Because when the weekly report came out, and I saw that my running back, DeAndre Swift, was the highest scoring running back that was started in fantasy, and I was like, what, really? He didn't even have 20 points. He had 19, which is really good. But yeah, so Rico Dowdle was one of the best fantasy quarterbacks really this week, which is actually pretty interesting, I think. So that's kind of for this matchup of what I wanted to get into. Again, this matchup, it was pretty much decided by Monday. We knew who had won that one. And another pretty lopsided matchup here in matchup number 3, the Wolves Warriors team. This was a big win for them. They were 1-3. Now they're going up to 2-3, taking down Eggball Elite. With the second highest score for the week at 159. 159 most weeks is going to be the high score for the week, except this week we also had somebody who had 180, which is in this league with a half PPR. That's pretty rare, and so very interesting there. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, a big reason for that with his 30 points going off, and Josh Allen, uh, just kind of mediocre. So definitely Josh Allen has had big fantasy days, but this was not it. It was just a mediocre day from him. So, um, and then Brian Robinson, who he got in the trade for Wolves Warriors, didn't get a lot of yards really. Um, I mean, the 2 touchdowns made up the bulk of the points because you get 6 points per touchdown. So that's 12 of the 13.8 points. He only had 18 yards on the ground. Extremely inefficient, but he just got lucky that he had a couple of goal line carries where he was able to squeak into the end zone twice and make his fantasy day still look good, despite really not having a great day. And then over here, we had Jamar Chase. So here's what I was talking about. The Cincinnati fantasy wise really had a nice day. 36.3, another big reason for the Wolves Warriors win. I'm sure that he's liking seeing that because Jamar Chase had kind of been a little bit disappointing to this point in the season, but this is why he was a first round draft pick because of games like this. And as we look on down, not a whole ton worthwhile to talk about. This Stephon Diggs over here, I think, is going to be pretty big because of Nico Collins having a hamstring injury. Now Stephon Diggs kind of probably becomes the number one receiver there in Houston, and we know that he is capable of having big games when he is the main guy to throw to. So I'm sure that they are thrilled about that. And I'm not because I have Nico Collins. But what can you do? Nothing. And then over here, we had tight end production here out of Brock Bowers. He's still going with the 2 tight end approach, and it did work out this week for him. Finally, we did see some tight ends getting some decent points. We saw Kyle Pitts. We saw from Tucker Kraft from Green Bay that I had a 20 points as a tight end. So definitely good to see some tight ends doing like better in fantasy, where in previous weeks the majority of them were getting less than 10 points per week. So that's pretty much this matchup. Let's see if there's anything else here that really sticking out. It's kind of seeming like Kareem Hunt is now taking over as the main running back in Kansas City, which is interesting. Kareem Hunt going back to Kansas City, and last year when he came back for the middle of the year for the Browns after Nick Chubb went down, Kareem Hunt really didn't look great for them, but he's been doing pretty good filling in for Kansas City. Kareem Hunt has, and Carson Steele has really been struggling. He's been fumbling the ball a lot, so I'm not sure that he's going to have a ton of fantasy relevance. It's really running out for him. And so, yeah, that's about it for that matchup. And we'll go on to the next matchup. We have Shaq's Sucky Squad getting their first W. Not so sucky anymore. Maybe we'll have to have that name changed now that he got a win. So now he's making Lamb Chubb's Play Along also 1-4 with them. So welcome to the 1-4 club, Lamb Chubb's Play Along. So not a good game out of them with only 87 points scored. And 108, a respectable, just average. But it was enough to get the win in for this game. And quarterbacks were pretty even in this one. Running backs were pretty even here. Again, we had some decent running back performances, but nothing like over 20 for any of the fantasy quarterbacks that got started. Not huge fantasy day for them. And then Garrett Wilson, 22 targets. So definitely you're happy to see the amount of times that Garrett Wilson was getting targeted. And so you're getting 22 targets. Yes, even though he only caught 13 of them, which is a lot for a receiver. Like if you see 13 catches, you're very happy with that. 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. So finally, Garrett Wilson having first round numbers, which is what he was expecting. So definitely was happy there. And CeeDee Lamb, who was a top 3 pick, only with 8.9 points. And actually, Jalen Tolbert, the number 2 receiver, had a much better fantasy day than CeeDee Lamb. Now, is that going to be a trend going forward? Probably not. I'm expecting that CeeDee Lamb will get involved more going forward. Pittsburgh's always a tough defense to play against. And so I'm sure that they were game planning to pretty much shut down CeeDee Lamb in every play. It didn't work because Dallas ended up winning by 3, but that was a close game. And then here we had Kelsey having a decent performance for a tight end. No touchdown, which would have really made his day look good, but it was good enough, I guess. I mean, not for getting the win, but that's for how tight ends have been this year, that is pretty good, and you would take it. So we'll see here. Minnesota's defense was looking really good. They had a touchdown, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions they got on Aaron Rodgers. Minnesota 5-0 as a team, just outside of fantasy. That's nobody expected Minnesota to be 5-0. They lost. They had a really young rookie quarterback that they were going to be starting this year. Gets hurt for the season. Minnesota was expected to be one of the worst teams in football this year, and here they are at 5-0. They're looking like they're going to be a playoff team, the way that they've been playing. So that's definitely been a surprise this year. And Baker Mayfield, when is this guy going to get started? He is. Let's just take a look at Baker Mayfield's card here. Number 3 fantasy quarterback. Definitely the Lamb Chub play along. Number 3 quarterback. I know you like Brock Purdy, but I mean, you can't argue with these numbers except for week 3 there. But other than that, 29, 17, 27, 23 points. Baker Mayfield has been one of the most solid fantasy quarterbacks, and let's just take a look at what Brock Purdy, what is he? He is the number 12 fantasy quarterback. So decent, but I only see one 20-point game in here. Baker's had 3 or 4. So we'll have to see if what happens there going forward. Just wanted to point that out there real quick. Okay, so that's it for that matchup. And we've got 2 more matchups that I'm going to be going over. And they were the 2 closest matchups. Both of them came down to Monday night. Team Ludina getting heartbroken on Monday night. Has 100.24, losing by just a little over a point. And the damage was done last night by Rashid Shaheed for New Orleans. I always kind of think that's a kind of a cool name, Rashid Shaheed. Just goes together well, so good job with the naming there, I guess. But yeah, so this was an extremely close matchup here. Unfortunately for Team Ludina, Devon Achane went out in this game fairly early. Didn't really put up much production. So he had a concussion and he was done for the game from there. So that was a big reason why this loss happened. If he had played the entire game, it probably would have been a win for Team Ludina over Team Emmy. But no, Team Emmy improves to 5-0 and maintaining the 1 seed in the league. squeaking out that victory. And then over here, Justin Jefferson, the first round pick for Team Ladina, having a decent game. I mean, only catching 6 out of 14. You would like to see more catches there, but still 92 yards receiving. The only thing that Justin Jefferson didn't get here was a touchdown, and you would have liked to see a few more passes caught. But 11 is still not a terrible fantasy score for an off day for your first round pick. But yeah, I mean, just one more pass being caught, just 10 more yards rushing, and it would have been a win for you. So that's always the tough part. It's like, man, if this guy would have just caught one more pass, one of these 8 passes he didn't catch. But on the bright side for Team Ladina, Brandon Ayuk, who hadn't done really anything all year, finally stepping up and having a big game. No touchdown here, but 147 yards receiving. That is a lot of yardage there. So that made that a pretty nice game. He's not the reason the Team Ladina lost. And if we take a look down here, kicker-wise, Younghoe Koo has been one of the best fantasy kickers. Let's take a look and see on his card. He's the number 4 fantasy kicker right now overall, so that's been a big bright spot. Unfortunately, was 3 for 5 on field goals, though. The one being blocked, I know I was watching with Team Ladina when that happened, and we kind of thought that he would get another 5 points there, but the kick was blocked, and he also missed one earlier as well. So if either one of those had gone in, this game would have gone differently in terms of who won and lost. So very interesting there. George Kittle, nice tight end game here. And yeah, so not a whole lot more to talk about on that one. Let's take a look at this last matchup with Team Mills card pulling out the big win. Now we do not have any team that is winless anymore, so there's at least 3 teams are 1-4 that have at least 1 win. Nobody is 0-5, so that's big news right there. You never like to see somebody just be completely out of it after week 5 where they're 0-5, and it's just, at that point, you're not going to be able to make the playoffs or really be able to win anything. So it's nice to see him get that win and at least stick around for another week. And this was, let's see here, Patrick Mahomes was going on Monday night. Over here, only 14 points. Another not great game for Patrick Mahomes, but the Chiefs keep winning. But fantasy-wise, Mahomes has not been great. He did throw for 300 yards, that's kind of the yardage that you want to see out of a pretty good quarterback in fantasy. But no touchdowns thrown, so that kind of kept the score down again for Mahomes. And let's see, Mahomes is number 15 fantasy quarterback, so very middle of the pack, just average. And over here you had Joe Burrow, just insanely good fantasy day. Cincinnati actually lost the game. I was kind of seeing there's only been in the Super Bowl era like 3 quarterbacks who have thrown for 5 touchdowns and 392 yards, or over 350 yards and 5 touchdowns that have lost the game. But fantasy-wise, those are huge numbers, and just the other players just didn't do as much for an McCaff attack. He had Chris Olave going on Monday night, but only 2 points, and that's a big reason why Team Mills Cards was able to pull off the big upset there. That was really kind of a surprise. I didn't think he was going to get it. And then Harrison Butker, the kicker for Kansas City, also is going Monday night. So you had 13 and 14 So 27 points against 2, and outscoring by 25 points, you win by 3. So you can see he was down by 22 going into the day. Those guys needed to outscore Chris Olave by that much, and they did. Chris Olave is a pretty good receiver usually fantasy wise, but only getting targeted 4 times, only the 2 catches. That's a big disappointment there for the No McCaff attack team. And I did hear that. Wait, did he drop Christian McCaffrey? Or am I just not able to see the IR slots? I probably just can't see the IR slots, but yeah, I did hear that Christian McCaffrey um, was getting some field work where he was practicing. Um, if there's no setbacks, he might be back by week 9 or 10. So hang in there for 4 more weeks, No McCaff attack. And maybe you can get the #1 overall draft pick in that might be able to help carry you to the playoffs. Um, but we still got a lot of football left. Still 9 weeks left in the season, and things can change very quickly. So we will have to see how things go going forward. Thank you for watching. And thank you again for that follow. I hope you enjoyed listening. And I will catch you next week, everybody next week, for the week 6, whenever you're watching this.